Hey YouTube, this is Justin with Alternative Drummer. I'm here today with a little synthesizer video. I know this is Alternative Drummer, but if you're new here, I do other videos like this from time to time because I compose my own music, and a lot of my music has a lot of synthesizers in it. I have a few hardware synthesizers, but I also use a lot of VSTs, or not a lot, but I have like a few that I really like, and I thought I would show those to all of you out there. And yeah. So that's what I'm doing. Here we go. I have Ableton Live open here. And the first thing I want to show you guys is the UVI workstation. Now the workstation is kind of nothing on its own unless you add a UVI sound bank. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And one that I really like here is the Darklight 2. Now, if you look down here, you might be able to guess what this is trying to emulate. It is basically a Fairlight CMI sampler emulator. And so this thing just sounds really cool. It's got a lot of voice type sounds in it that I like a lot, like these. I like these kind of, 8-bit type sampler sounds from the early 80s. They're some of my favorite sounds, like early digital samplers, I think had that like grit to them that I just really like. And I also like just like kind of a hair of cheesiness, so that's like why I like this so much. This thing is really cool because it not only has like a synthesizer section, it also has like some other elements that the Fairlight had, which was like sequencers. There's like a drum sequencer right here. And then there's also this other page that is kind of like a step sequencer. And this one's really cool too. Check this out. And so you can modify all of this stuff. You can change the samples that are coming in. So let's just change this up. And then we can, modify the levels here and add and subtract and just kind of hit random things. And I could have taken a little more care. Oh my God. Anyway, I think you're getting the idea. Yes, I really like this one. Another one that I like a lot is also in the UVI workstation, and that is down here called Emulation 1. This one is actually discontinued. They have Emulation 2 now, but this is Emulation 1, basically modeled after the EMU emulator, which is another really early sampler. So let me just play a couple of these sounds here. So yeah, more low bit samplers from the 80s. I just really like these things, and there's a lot of voice sounds in this one as well. So choir voices, here we go. Classic fair voice as well here, but it sounds a little different. Actually, I like this one a little better. It's very Inya. Yeah, so that stuff's really cool. And then this also has a drum section as well. So let's open this up and play a middle C here. And again, you can edit these things as well too. And yeah, I could just go on and have fun with that forever. But, the drum machine stuff, a lot of times what I'll do when I use a drum machine, I don't use them that often, but sometimes I'll put like a light drum machine in the background to kind of go along with my drums. And sometimes it's kind of prominent, but a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take the bass drum out because I don't like to have two bass drums kind of conflicting with each other in the same drum, track or in the same song. But usually the higher end stuff like snares and cymbals and things like that, they can kind of sit well together. But when you have like low end fighting, then it doesn't really work. So what I'll do sometimes is just drop out the bass drums and then record a track, do some variations and stuff. And then I'll play real drums over top of it and usually get some pretty interesting results that way. So another plugin that I like to use quite a bit are actually some old plugins that I created myself. These are called the Mothman synthesizers, or Mothman series. And I made these back in probably 2000 and, I don't know, 2000. No, it was probably like 2010, actually, a little later than that. But they're kind of basic synthesizers, but they're really cool. They have a lot of sounds, and since I designed them myself, I have like all of the presets and everything are ones that I created. And there's some pretty interesting ones in here, like Smorf, that one. Toys. And these synths are kind of like a combination of subtractive synthesis, phase distortion synthesis, and FM synthesis in a way. And this one especially is kind of like that. This is the first one I made. The second one I made is called the Mothman 1966. And this one's actually even more simple. But I actually really like it for adding certain atmospheres. Basically, even though it's very simple, this one, all the waveforms are digital oscillators that I actually created the bass waveforms in Audacity to create, these waveforms in this plugin. And so it gives it this kind of lo-fi, I don't know, kind of cool sound, I think. And there's a lot of actually some pretty crazy sounds in here. Let me show you some of these. Oh, here's a good one. And if you go through my music and really pay attention, you'll hear these Mothman synths all over my music all the time, even still. The Mothman 1000 was the first one, the 66 was the second one, and then I did a kind of revamp of the 1000, and I called it the 2000. And this one's basically the same, it just has some added effects, and I think it's a little bit cooler, a little deeper sounding. And I think there's some new presets in it as well. I really like this one. That's a good one. So yeah, that's the Mothman 2000. And then, I know this is turning into a long video, but what can I do? Mothman Z3000 is the last one that I made. And this one I was really trying to do an emulation of the Casio CZ3000 synthesizer that I had at the time. And it does a pretty good job. I never really got to the point where I was able to import SysX or even recreate the stock patches or anything like that. I created my own, but it has all the controls that the CZ3000 has. And this sound I use all the time. So the thing with these plugins, though, is they're so old. You might notice this down here in the corner. It says 64 32-bit bridge. And that is this thing called JBridge that basically allows me to use 32-bit plugins in the 64-bit version of Ableton, because certain DAWs like Reaper, you can just run them inside of Reaper, even if they're 32-bit. But Ableton doesn't do that. You have to convert the plugins, and JBridge is a little piece of software you can buy that's not very expensive, but it's very worth it. You can convert all your old 32-bit plugins to 64. So if you do download these from my website, I believe they're there again, you have to keep that in mind. They're 32-bit because they're pretty old, but they do work. Okay, another plugin that I like a lot is this Mini Moog VA64. Now this thing is actually a free plugin, and it's surprisingly good. It actually has some really nice Moog type sounds in it. And this has also been bridged. It's a 32-bit plugin. But let me just show you some of these. It really has, a good analog synth type sound, especially for a free plugin. It's a little bit on the thin side, but you can totally EQ that. So that one I use occasionally. It's not like one of my all-time favorites, but lately I've been using it a little more. And then I'll show you now a couple of new ones, or pretty new for me, that I've got that I really enjoy. One of them is this codex synth from Waves. Now, Waves isn't really known for making synths. And actually, this thing is kind of old, but you can still get it on their website. And it's actually pretty cheap. I think when I got it, it was only like $30 or something. It was during a sale. And originally it was like $200 and some, but this is a really crazy synthesizer. Like, it has a lot of stuff that it can do. It's basically a wavetable synth that you can import your own waves and just manipulate the living crap out of them. And it has some really amazing sounding presets too. This thing is like a really hidden gem, I think, because like I said, Waves, they usually make just effects plugins, you know, and mastering stuff, which I use a lot of that stuff too, EQs and reverbs, but they're not really known for their synths. But I think they have like 2, but this one is really, really good. Some really awesome sequences in here that you can play with. And like you can, like I said, you can really manipulate everything. It has like multiple envelopes and filters and LFOs, and like, it's really crazy actually. It has like an endless amount of stuff that you could play with this plugin. So I really, really enjoy this thing. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm still learning it. It's really fun to map it, you know, to the MIDI controller and do some real-time controls with it. And it's also really cool how you can import your own samples. So like, well, I'm not going to do it because I don't have anything planned here. But you could go and import your own samples, but it's not a sampler. This is a wavetable synthesizer. So it's taking those samples and creating basically digital oscillators out of them, out of the samples, and then you can process them as they're, you know, as if they were a waveform in a synthesizer, which, well, they are in this example. but yeah, it's really, really nice. I just really dig it. So I've been using that one a lot. And then also, just very recently, I got these 2 Cherry Audio plugins, and Cherry Audio make amazing stuff. And this one, the Surrealistic MG1 Plus, this is a emulator of the MG1, the Realistic. It was called by Realistic Radio Shack. I actually had one of these. It was kind of like a Moog, like a cheap Moog made by Radio Shack. And this thing is exactly like I remember it, which is really cool. It's a lot of fun to play. And I've really been using this a lot. And this thing's free. Like, it's just a really cool synth. Those aren't great presets, but I've done some really cool stuff with it. And like I said, it's just like I remembered. It has this poly thing here. You can kind of go like faux polyphonic. It's really neat. Anyway, and then in addition to that, I also have this Dream Synth plugin by Cherry Audio as well. And I paid for this one. I think this one was like $30 or something like that. But this one is also really cool. Still learning this one too. But I mean, there's just great presets. So yeah, another really, really cool synth by Cherry Audio. So those are basically what I'm into these days. I have several more, but I try not to install too much stuff because, like, in the early days, and I've been doing this for a really long time, and like the early days of computer recording, when VSTs and plugins and stuff like that were becoming readily available and there were people posting free ones online, it's really easy to go down that rabbit hole. And that's what I did back then. I would just install like 80 billion, like plugins and synths and so much where I wouldn't be able to keep track of what I had, and it also almost makes you have too many options. So if you find like 3 or 4 that you really like a lot and just learn how to use them, I tend to take that approach now more than before. And especially with like EQs and reverbs and stuff like that and mastering chains. Like I have like a few things that I pretty much always use. But you kind of learn that stuff over time, You just experiment for a while and then you start to figure out what it is that you like and how you like to work. So not everybody's the same. Anyway, that's this video. These are some synth plugins that I like and kind of what you've been hearing in some of these songs. Hopefully you guys found it educational and helpful. Hopefully it made sense and this recorded, because sometimes I record a whole video like this and it didn't actually record. But hopefully this one did. And thanks for watching, everybody. And I'll see y'all really soon. Have a great day.